All right, well, good evening. And thank you to everyone who is here in person and those who are a part of our online audience. I'm pleased to welcome you to the District 7 School Board Candidate Forum. District 7 represents schools in Mandarin and parts of the south side of Jacksonville. We appreciate you for spending your evening with us and demonstrating your commitment to public education and to our city. My name is Rachel Tutwiler Fortune, and I serve as the president of the Jacksonville Public Education Fund. I'm pleased to co-moderate the school board candidate forums this year with my colleague Leofric Thomas, who serves as JPEF's manager for data and policy and played a leading role in organizing the 2024 forums. JPEF is an independent, high-capacity local education fund with the mission of activating community support, connecting partners, and advancing effective ideas for the success of all students. Our work is grounded in research and best practice. We also actively seek out input from parents, educators, students, and community leaders. These forums are being put on by a coalition of nonpartisan nonprofit organizations. We would like to thank our forum partners, and we invite our representatives who happen to be in the room with us to stand as we recognize you. I know we have a couple of folks on their posts still supporting the implementation of the event. But we have the Duval County Council of PTA. We have the Jacksonville Civic Council. Of course, the Jacksonville Public Education Fund. The Jacksonville Tributary. The NAACP Jacksonville Chapter. And 90 Forward. Your engagement truly matters, and that's why we're extremely grateful that you're taking time out of your busy schedules to be here tonight. Our candidates who you'll hear from this evening are Mrs. Melody Boudot and Mrs. Sarah Mannion. We want to thank you both so much for participating this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to just go over our ground rules. For the candidates, we're going to start with brief introductions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and we will do that alphabetically. Then we will transition to the question portion of the evening. We will alternate the order of respondents so that each candidate has the same opportunity to be the first to answer questions. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds, so about a minute and a half, to answer each question, and 30 seconds to offer a clarification if they choose to when they are mentioned by another candidate. We will alternate the order of respondents, so that's kind of the plan there. To keep us on track this evening, both during the introduction and question and answer portion of the program, my colleague Juana will put up a yellow warning card when you have 15 seconds left for your introduction or response, and she will put up a red warning card to please end your answer when your time is over. And at that point, we would politely move on. We want to get to as many questions as possible, so we ask you to just keep in mind and honor those time limits. Our questions have been sourced in a collaboration between JPEF staff with some additions from our organizational partners. We will also take some questions from those who are attending in person and those who are joining us virtually. If you're joining us on Zoom, please share your questions using the Q&A section. If you are on Facebook, please chat us your questions. And if you're here in the room at the Hopewell Church, please use the question card that was handed to you when you arrived. We will do our best to get through as many questions as possible, but please know that we may not be able to get to all of the questions. We are live on Facebook right now, so we invite you to share the forum so that it can reach a broader audience. We want to make sure this information reaches as many community members as possible. At the end of the forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make closing remarks as well. Some topics on the agenda this evening include school closures, the role of the school board, equitable education, teacher recruitment and retention, and parent and caregiver engagement. We also want to remind you of some important election information before we begin. The primary election will be held on Tuesday, August the 20th, with early voting happening from August the 5th through the 18th. You still have time to sign up for a mail ballot if you wish to do so. If no school board candidate receives more than 50% of the vote during the primary, there will be a runoff between the top 2 candidates in November. That opportunity, of course, is only available in District 5's race, which has more than 2 candidates running. And the general election will be held November 5th, with early voting happening from October 21st through November the 3rd. School board elections provide the community with an important opportunity to engage with the public education system. And we are extremely grateful to the candidates for taking time tonight to speak directly to voters and for their interest in public service.
Before I go, can we give Ms. Fortune a hand clap for saying all of that? As she takes a breath to delve into the questions and hear from Mrs. Bolduc and Mrs. Mannion. We also want to ensure the community understands the role of the school board. The school board sets policies that govern our schools, such as conduct. The school board is also tasked with adopting policies to comply with education-related legislation like those that may come down the pipeline from the federal and state governments. The school board is also responsible for the budget of the school district. Although the state of Florida has a big say in the funding school districts receive, the school board determines how a lot of these education dollars are allocated within the school district. The school board also approves curriculums for all schools, so therefore they are directly responsible for how our future surgeons start out in science, how our future writers learn the nuances of language. Finally, the school board oversees facility issues. It is the responsibility of the school board to approve or deny changes in school academic programs, like magnet programs, and which schools should remain open or be closed down.
All right, we're ready to get started. So we'll start with introductions, starting with Mrs. Melody Bolduc.
Hi, my name is Melody Bolduc. I grew up in the Mandarin area of Jacksonville. I attended schools here in Jacksonville and graduated from the University of North Florida, summa cum laude, with a degree in education. I have certifications from kindergarten through 6th grade, also middle grades integrated, 5th through 9th grade, and my initial certification and degree is in secondary English 6th through 12th grade. I am married, 18 daughters who are attending Mandarin High School. I am a local small business owner. And as for what I'm doing here with this campaign, I'm on the ballot by the will of the people. I am a parent and teacher in this district, and I've been knocking doors since September, collecting input from our community. I have endorsements from the First Coast Manufacturers Association, the Fraternal Order of Police, and I've been forming relationships for years, including endorsements by 3 of our state representatives and our senator. I've secured our governor's endorsement because I do support the education agenda. And I also have the support of 12 of 19 of our city councilmen, both representatives from District 7 included in that. And I am helping to ensure that we have represented all the way up to Tallahassee so that my influence is not limited here to Duval County. We need to be able to work with our city councilmen. We need to be able to work with our legislators to make sure that we can do as much as we can for public schools. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Melody Bolduc.
Thank you, Melody. Now we will hear from Mrs. Sarah Mannion.
Thank you so much to JPEF and all the community partners for hosting these series of forums. I know it's no easy task to bring everybody together. To Hopewell Church for providing us use of these incredible facilities. My name is Sarah Mannion. I'm running for School Board District 7. I am a Jacksonville native, born right here. Like many families, we came here through the Navy. My father was in the Navy for 23 years, retired as a chief petty officer. They were initially stationed here and decided this is the type of place that we want to raise our permanent home. And so I was fortunate enough to live right here in Mandarin and attend elementary school at Greenland Pines as the very first kindergarten class. I went to Mandarin Middle and Twin Lakes, all here in our. I graduated from a magnet high school, Wolfson High School. I am married to my husband Charles of 15 years, and we have 3 children. My children have come through and are still going through our public schools. My oldest graduated from Mandarin High in 2023. I have a rising third grader at Mandarin Oaks Elementary, and I have a little one who will start kindergarten in 2025, also at Mandarin Oaks. I love our schools. I am a very proud product of our Duval County Public Schools. They have helped me be where I am today, which is an attorney that serves our community. I practice in real estate, bankruptcy, and probate law, and the focus of my practice is to help families and small businesses overcome financial crisis, or the death of a loved one, or dealing with problems in real estate. I believe those are a unique set of skills that our school board is in dire need of right now with the problems that we are facing. I'm very involved in our community, in our schools. I'm an officer at our PTA, I serve on our school advisory council, and I'm involved in many community organizations. I know the importance of being in our community and bringing people together so that we can lift all citizens and all students and all children in Duval County Public Schools.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go ahead and get into our questions, and we're going to start Ms. Beauduc first. And we're going to start here. We're going to start with the challenge that has activated our community in a major way, which is the recent Master's Facilities Plan, proposals, and school closure recommendations. So Ms. Beauduc, as we are sure you know, the district passed a sales surtax a couple of years ago to help renovate and rebuild several school facilities. At the same time, the cost of construction has skyrocketed and enrollment has declined more than previously expected, meaning the district is not able to build everything that was promised in that sales tax campaign and has begun to float the idea of potential school closures instead. Can you describe how you, in partnership with our now new superintendent and the board, would evaluate the district's facility plan given these challenging circumstances and ensure thoughtful use of the district capital and sales tax surtax funds while addressing the community's growing concerns?
Thank you. For the master's facilities plans, we must be able to respond appropriately to the changing dynamics in education and the economy. So while the current board is going to rightfully be making those decisions up front, we know that this is going to be a changing plan. Just as it is now, it was created with different numbers than we're currently looking at. So it does need to be revisited altogether, and it will probably need to be continually revisited. We have many changes to how education is delivered, which I know will come up later in questioning, so I won't discuss that. But plans by the current board need to be scalable so that we're able to change what is needed. The truth is that we can all sit here and say, nobody wants to close schools. Schools are going to be closed. Schools in District 7 are bigger than the schools in many places around the county. And those larger schools, like Mandarin High, like Atlantic Coast, are carrying some of our schools with a significantly smaller number of students, like 400. It costs a lot to operate each and every school. So it is imperative that we make some hard decisions. And so the last part of that question was, sorry.
Decision the district made. How will you ensure that,
Okay. Okay, well, stakeholder input is the most important thing. So we do have to have community, decisions and conversations and make sure that we are considering input in those decisions in addition to numbers. Thank you.
Perfect. And Mrs. Mannion, the same question. If you need me to repeat, I can.
I'm good, thank you. So in District 7, we are very fortunate at the moment not to have any proposed closures and consolidations where we are. We have wonderful schools. We get to keep them for now. As a member of a body of the school board, right, the school board representative is one of 7. So we are making decisions that will affect the entire county. We need to ensure that any changes, whether or not they affect District 7, are thoughtful, equitable, and sustainable across the entire district. This means we really need to be drilling down on our data, ensuring that the reports that we're currently given are accurate, which at the moment they're not. We need sufficient data. We need to have continued community conversations. I know they're hosting the last focus group meeting tonight from their current timeline of this master facility plan. I believe they're unveiling some sort of new idea that they're going to review. That is important. We really need to sort of pump the brakes on the current plan because it It was too fast and too much, and they were not really taking into account the needs of the community, especially those who have a lot of schools that are slated for closure, because those communities are walkable. Some of them have really incredible programs that need to be taken into account. If we don't have accurate data, then we are not going to be able to make thoughtful and equitable and sustainable decisions that will benefit the entire district. Thank you.
So that leads us to our next question. So as you stated, District 7 is fortunate. They don't have any schools listed for closure. But being a representative of the entire school district, if schools still face closures, what would your approach be to a school's community, and how would you guide them or help guide them in understanding the district's decision? Ms. Mannion, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Communication is key. I was at a community meeting, and there was a parent there who explained a story right at the last week of school when we really all were hearing about these proposed school closures. And this particular school is in West Riverside, which has a huge population of, not English speakers. And there were parents in line to pick up their children who had no idea what was being discussed because it was not being communicated to them in a manner in which they could understand. So first and foremost, we have to ensure that as a district, we are providing sufficient communication to all families in a way that they can understand. We need to be hosting town halls that actually allow for conversation. I know many of you were at the community meetings and we were able to, provide comments, but there was really no feedback given in that process. Everyone needs to have a seat at this table, not just our students, families, our staff, our teachers, our workers, in the district. Everyone needs to have a seat at the table for these discussions because at the end of the day, these are our tax dollars. We want to ensure that they are going to the benefit of every student in Duval County. And so we have to communicate in a way that everybody can understand so that we know everybody's involved in the process.
Ms. Beauduc, the same question.
So one of the deficits that I believe that we have as a county is that we are not transparent, we are not communicative. And so that is one of the reasons, that's a huge part of my concern and why I'm even running for this seat is as parents, as community stakeholders, there should be transparency at every step of the process, and there should be transparency between teachers in the district, between administrators in the district, between parents in the district. And as a whole, that hasn't been happening. And so we need to find a way to better, as Sarah stated, communicate with our community. And whether that's newsletters, whether that's more town halls, that's something that we need to be more creative about how we're collecting community feedback. At this point, we don't have a clear picture of who's voted which way on what. You can't just go to a website and see all the votes and how all of your board members voted. And these are things that should be happening for us. So as a whole, I would say we have a long way to go in community conversations. And I would be open to any of those media. But that's the biggest deal. As your representative, I want to make sure that you are not only aware of what's going to be voted on, but who has voted how, and also, my time is up.
Yes, sorry.
I'll
Thank you
continue
so
after.
much. So this next question comes to us from our partners at the Jacksonville Civic Council. We're living through a defining moment for the future of public schools and public education. The Civic Council has launched a strategic plan that emphasizes a vision in which we retain and attract new talent to Jacksonville to access our best-in-class education. Two pillars of their plan focus on inspiring people to act with a vision and a story of Greater Jacksonville. And the second one focuses on building a system of education that produces the workforce of tomorrow. So we'll take those goals one at a time. Mrs. Beauduc, we'll start with you. For inspiration, what education systems, school districts across the nation, for example, would you consider to be world-class and why? What might we do in Duval County to move our system in that direction? We'd like to know what initiatives you may prioritize to enhance our public education system.
Thank you. So there are so many amazing systems. I mean, we could look at Montessori, we could look at Waldorf, we could look at classical. These are all things that I would be interested in implementing depending on the school. But offering those programs, actually, some of those are the reason why some of our students are attracted to some of the schools outside of our district. We have alternate schools that are offering classical education. Duval County does not. Having any system that increases student engagement, that increases student participation is what's necessary. So I've been teaching for 24 years. 12 of those years were in the public school system. And so the only way to improve student performance is to give individualized instruction to each child in the areas where they need it. And so unless we're doing that, we're not going to see improvement. And if kids are not improving, and if they feel like they're failing, they are not going to act right in class. They're going to cause disruptions. And that is the biggest reason all the teacher feedback we're getting, they're telling us the classroom environment is horrible. We don't want to be there. We're not respected. We're not able to teach. Our hands are tied. We're being scored on our ability to teach children who aren't paying any attention. So retaining teachers goes directly to engaging students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Mannion, same question.
Thank you so much. As far as my inspiration, any school system that really values high quality public education for every child and truly supports every teacher. Our teachers are at the front line every day. When we have agendas that attack our teachers, really handcuff them, cause fear in their classrooms, our teachers cannot feel supported. So my inspiration would be a world in which our teachers truly feel the support that they need from their community, and that is autonomy, respect, increased wages, better benefits across the board. That will result in a better education system for every single child, and that will lift our community overall. When we talk about building tomorrow's workforce, we need to understand and recognize not every child may want to go to college. There are incredible vocational opportunities that we have right here in the district, and that we can do a better job of explaining those programs to all of our families. College is not for everyone. My oldest, after she graduated from Mandarin High, decided she wanted to discover culinary arts, and she's currently employed as a baker at Publix. And that is something that is really her passion and her inspiration, and the education that she received through our system helped her get there. There's a culinary arts program at Mandarin High, which is incredible. And so when we talk about just building the workforce of tomorrow, we first need to support our teachers to ensure that they have the resources they need to do that.
Thank you so much. So moving on into the next question, Mrs. Mannion, we'll start with you for this one. On the goal of preparation, what are the top 2 or 3 skills we need to teach our kids so they're ready to join the workforce of the future? And as a school board member, what policies will you put in place to assure students reach those skill sets?
Thank you very much. I think number one, critical thinking, right? Understanding the complex world around them and using those critical thinking skills to determine what issues are here, how can I analyze this, how can I best move forward, how can I understand risk. So we need to have critical thinkers that are coming out of our schools, no matter if they're in college or in a vocation or in the military. We need critical thinkers. Kids also have to have a basic understanding of just what it means to be an adult, because it's hard. Adulting is hard. Paying bills, balancing a budget. As I cited earlier, I'm a bankruptcy attorney. I see every day the struggle that our families have, just understanding basic budgeting needs, what credit means, what interest means, and how to deal with that in a not nice economy where inflation is pretty high. And so we need to focus on ensuring our kids have basic understanding of what it means to be an adult, financial management, civic engagement, what it means to be a voter, what it means to legally be an adult and now be subject to laws. And we also need to ensure that our kids are kind, that they're compassionate, that they are inclusive of those around them, that they're supporting each other. As we move into this next generation, we want to ensure that our kids are supporting each other and everyone around them.
Thank you. Mrs. Bolduc, same question.
So as far as skills that are going to make them prepared for the workforce, I'm going to start with literacy, reading and writing, because most of our students, I'm going to say less than 50%, are reading and writing on level. That's deplorable. Even our children who are graduating with high scores are going on to college, and they're not ready. They are not on level. I sat down in the year 2000 when our literacy rates were higher than they are now. It was my first year teaching, and I had the the academic dean from JU, FSCJ, and UNF, all three of them came in and spoke to our English department and told us these children can't write and they can't read on level. Now it's worse. So that's number one. Number two, they need to know math. We are graduating students who literally can't change at the grocery store. They can't count change. So mathematics is not just, a skill that, we need to know algebra. The reason we need to know algebra is because those are the skills that teach problem solving. You're making pathways in your brain to problem solve. I've got a student here shaking her head because she's heard me say it so many times. So we have to grow as thinkers through just basic foundational skills, math, science, reading, writing. Those are my biggest ones. Do I agree that we also need to teach our kids to be kind and, these other things? Yes, but primary job of education.
Thank you,
Reading
Ms.
and writing.
Mannion.
Thank you.
Ms. Bolduc, I'm sorry. Ms. Bolduc, we're going to continue on with you. So equality in education means providing the same resources for everyone, whereas equity requires us to take into account each student's individual needs and provide tailored support accordingly. So regardless of your district, the majority of Duval County Public Schools, which is over 50%, serve students who are racially diverse and are labeled as economically disadvantaged. How do you plan to equitably support all students as a school board member for the entire county?
So regardless of what district and what schools, our low-income students are not performing on level across the board. Not in District 7, not in District 5. And that's been a problem for years. And the truth is that the greatest indicator of student performance is parental involvement and their ability to be able to be supportive of their students. And so socioeconomic status ends up being the biggest deciding factor in whether or not a student succeeds. So targeted, individualized instruction is the only answer. Every student needs to receive targeted, individualized instruction. The only way to do that is to prioritize spending for teachers and students in classrooms instead of on a lot of our third-party contracts, which I'm sure we'll get into fiscal things. So I won't spend a lot of time talking about that here. But knowing that literacy is a countywide issue, over the last 7 years, I've been teaching kids on an individual basis, targeting where the needs are, and I've spent 7 years proving that it works. Superintendent Green even acknowledged the importance of what I was doing and said, you're exactly where you need to be, working with these students who have not managed to do well in the district. I have been spending a lot of my time on my campaign working in areas across our district, including attending our Black Expo, and it's a major consideration. Oh, well, that happens fast. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolduc. And Ms. Mannion, same question.
We need to be meeting students where they are, identifying what their need is. When we talk about equity, it's not just their instruction in the classroom, it's ensuring that they are ready for instruction in the classroom. Are our kids coming to school hungry? Are they able to get to school at all? Do they have housing insecurity? And so when we talk about equity, for me, it's about identifying those needs and roadblocks for our children and our families to ensure that when students come into school, they are set up for success. How can we work with our community partners to remove those roadblocks for these families? How can we ensure our transportation system shows up and gets them to school when they need to be there? How can we make sure that those bellies are not rumbling during class time and they're not paying attention to what they need to be learning? So when we talk about equity, for me, it's ensuring that there is an even playing field for all of our children. If they are not showing up ready to learn and have the ability to do so, what we're teaching them is not getting through. They need to have everything they need in order to learn. When we talk about our community partnerships, we have incredible ones already in the district, but we need to be, one, ensuring that every family knows what those partnerships are, what those programs that are available for those students, and we need to be proactive in identifying the needs of families. Because if a kid shows up to school hungry, or if not at all, they're not able to receive instruction that day. So we need to continue to work on our partnerships with our community engagement.
Thank you so much. The next two questions are about challenges that are not specific to Duval County. They represent nationwide issues that Duval County Public Schools is working with many partners to address even as we speak. So Mrs. Spanier, we'll start with you for this question. In Duval County, the percentage of third graders passing the Florida State Assessment for Reading has not exceeded 52% in the last 10 years of available data. What are your thoughts on how to approach this historic issue?
Thank you. This is important to me because I have one going into third grade next year. So currently, Duval County is still well below the state average. I know that the school board's current strategic plan, aims to have Duval County within the top quartile in the state. We are not there. We're nowhere near to being there within the next 2 years. So we have a lot of work to do. We know the importance of literacy and what the effects of that all throughout a child's life. As they graduate from school, being on par with literacy rates can affect their ability to earn later on in life. So the first thing we need to do is ensure we have books in classrooms for children to read. We need to be sure that those books are representative of those children and they are excited to read them. We need to be investing in our early literacy programs and really engaging children with books at a young age. They always say from, K to 2, you are learning to read. After that, you are reading to learn. And so we really need to establish those fundamental literacy skills at an early level, continue our partnerships, with Head Start, with Early Learning Coalition, continue our partnerships with Read USA to get books into hands of kids over the summer. And so, literacy is by far the most important thing, and we need to have our kids excited to read. And so we need books in classrooms for them to do that.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Bolduc, same question.
So this is kind of my jam. I love reading, and I'm a literature teacher first and foremost. And I love books. I love connecting children to books that'll be high interest for them. And from the time my girls were babies, I read to them before I could argue, probably even knew what I was saying. And they both ended up even in a middle school level, post high school reading levels. And we did that by using classics, by using high quality literature. I'm going to say that not everything that's written on paper is literature. We need to be making good choices for what's in our libraries, but there's no excuse to empty classrooms of libraries. So I too would like to see books on shelves. I would also like to see partnerships that promise, that agree to stay in line with state law. And while I would like to see students engaged, there are materials that we have found in our schools that violate state law that are pornographic. And if you are not certain about what I'm talking about, I'm happy to send you links, and you can ask for me to give them to you afterward. But absolutely, engaging students in literature is what helps them learn how to read, and targeted instruction and fluency and phonemic awareness all the way up. Thank you so much.
So Mrs. Bolduc, we'll go back to you as well with this next question to start. In Duval County, the number of students who are considered chronically absent, that is missing 4 weeks of school, has nearly doubled to 27% from where it was the year before the COVID-19 pandemic. It was 15.6% at that time. What role do you see the school board playing in getting students to school?
Well, part of that is limited, unfortunately, at the state level, because our state attorney has not decided to legally pursue parents who are not bringing their children to school. And they are somewhat lost in the system. And what we used to do was we had an attendance officer who would call the families who are not there, who should have been on, who are on the rolls where students didn't show up, and they would do home visits. And when that didn't pan out, they would proceed legally to have the courts order parents to bring children to school. Now, there really isn't an alternative to that. You can't force people in any other way. You can't encourage them in any other way. I mean, other than communication, sending out more communication that school is starting, opening up, having the orientations and the open houses to encourage parents to bring their children. But legally, that's something that would need to be dealt with.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Mannion, same question.
Thank you. I think most of us can remember what learning during COVID was like, especially with very small children. It was tough. Most kids got up, they were in their pajamas, they just logged in online. Maybe they had to share their screen, put their video on, maybe they didn't. It was very easy to shift your mindset of, I don't really need to be there. We have to do a better job of ensuring that, number one, we're getting children to school, right? A lot of the absenteeism is related to transportation issues. So how can we fix our budget in order to prioritize transportation to our students? You may have seen that the district recently changed their bus availability for middle and high school students to now it's 2 miles away from their school. If you live more than 2 miles away from your middle or high school, less than 2 miles away from your middle or high school, you no longer have the option to ride the bus. Pedestrian safety in Jacksonville is not great. So I know I would not want to be sending an 11-year-old to walk over very busy roads to school. The reason they made that change is because of our budgetary concerns. We have to really figure out what we can do with our budget to ensure that transportation and getting children to school is a priority. Because if the bus doesn't show up and their parents already at work, they're not going to have a way to get there.
Thank you for that, Ms. Mannion. So we'll stay with you for this question. As we reach this pivotal moment in education, leadership and accountability is at the forefront, especially as we discuss policies from Tallahassee. So, Ms. Mannion, you will be joining, if elected, the board at a time when a new superintendent has just assumed responsibility for DCPS. The superintendent is a critical and one of 2 positions that report to the school board. Tell us about how you would approach building an effective and collaborative relationship with the new superintendent, balancing accountability and support to ensure success in advancing DCPS's mission.
So the strategic plan of the board sets forth these specific benchmarks in which the performance of the superintendent is measured. So we need to, one, ensure that those benchmarks are being regularly reviewed at every interval. What is being met, what is not being met, and why is that the case? I have served on board leadership where I've been part of, executive level evaluations. And really the main thing is having trust with your executive, with your superintendent, to ensure that you can have those honest conversations that will result in, productive change. The working relationship with the superintendent needs to be built on trust first and foremost. The district deserves a school board whose members are not actively working against the superintendent. When relationships between the school board and the superintendent are poor, our school systems suffer, our children suffer, and our teachers suffer. And so we need to have relationships that are built on trust and accountability and ensure that the board is doing its job to regularly review those benchmarks and have those tough conversations when needed and give praise when needed as well. And so it's a two-way street. We have to have, a board that will hold him accountable and a superintendent that is willing to have those tough conversations and make productive change based upon that.
Thank you for that. And Ms. Beauduc, you'll be next.
Thank you. So the school board hired our new superintendent based upon his vision for the district. And so it is important that we place our trust in our board and in our superintendent and create policy and support policy that will put wings on his vision. I have great faith in our new leadership because I spent a lot of time speaking with both candidates for superintendent. When I spoke with Dr. Bernier, he was very solution-oriented. He had answers, specific answers for every question, and he is very intent on meeting with stakeholders on all levels. He even spoke about creating a kitchen cabinet, as he has in his other districts. He has worked in areas with even a higher population than Duval County, and areas that have higher risk population as far as percentages go than Duval County does. So he has a great deal of experience. And so what we need to do is set clear expectations for him. I intend to have a monthly breakfast or lunch meeting with him to keep conversation going, see where he is on our agenda and what we're targeting. But I intend to be very, very active in our schools and communicating with him about what's going on and hearing his solutions. So I'm very eager to work with our superintendent.
Awesome. So we'll stay with you, Mrs. Boduc, to answer this next question. So as a school board member, how would you envision working with legislators, government officials, nonprofit organizations, and business leaders to enhance educational opportunities given the unique challenges and opportunities facing public education today?
Well, especially considering our budget constraints, we really need to be engaging as many people as possible, nonprofits. We need to work with Tallahassee to get increased funding for some of our projects. We have a, I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question one more time?
No problem. As a school board member, how would you envision working with legislators, government officials, nonprofit organizations, and business leaders to enhance educational opportunities given the unique challenges and opportunities facing public education today?
Yeah, so adding programs and funding through those entities is important, but as far as working in Tallahassee, some of my biggest concerns are standardized testing and curriculum flexibility for teachers and students. So advocating for those two things is one of the things that I want to do, as far as our legislators in Tallahassee, in addition to, making sure that we are being creative about looking for funding. And if we're transparent, I'm going to tell you, our community is amazing at coming together and providing help for us. And so, if we say, hey, look, we have a problem with, fighting at these schools, or we have a problem with, getting substitute teachers, our parents, our community has always been quick to step up. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Mannion?
Thank you. With our nonprofit partners is just continuing to build those relationships that we have with them in order to access resources that maybe as a district, we are not experts in, or perhaps we can't afford because of our budget problems. But the role of the school board really, other than what is set forth in statute that our duties are to our district, is to advocate for our district. And how we do that is by building relationships with those in Tallahassee and those right here in the city. We need to educate and inform our Duval delegation on what our needs are and work with them to, bring things back to Jacksonville that will benefit everyone in the district. We should be a champion for our public schools and encouraging those in our Duval delegation to also be champions for our schools right here at home, because our citizens deserve no less. Our parents and teachers already do so much. I know that you all probably have received Amazon wish lists from teachers this year of things that they need. And so asking our community members, our parents, our teachers to try and do more when we have representatives and legislators that could be bringing more home is not always fair, to the individual parent and taxpayer. So we need to build those relationships with those in Tallahassee, be effective advocates and champions for our public school system here.
Thank you for that. So we'll stay with you here, Mrs. Mannion. What is your perspective on school choice and the use of publicly funded vouchers? How will the school board work with the legislation to provide support and accountability to all schools receiving public funds?
Thank you. I think choice is important. Every parent deserves the right to make educational decisions for their child. They know their child best. Where is my child suited to be? But the role of the school board is to advocate and strive for our neighborhood schools And in this era of choice, we should be working to make sure that our neighborhood schools are the top choice every time. Regarding vouchers, I think that they may have been really well intended to provide opportunity, for those children and families who may not have had other, ability to afford attending private school. However, the expansion of the program, doesn't have any income limit. There's no need requirement. So what we're seeing is that there are some families who may have already been sending their children to private schools that's now being subsidized by this money that used to be in our public schools. The result of that is that some schools have raised tuition, and it has priced out some of those families who would have benefited from those voucher programs. And so the well-intentioned program, I think, is not seeing the results that it originally intended. And as a result, our public school system is hurting. That's one of the big reasons we're having these conversations about school closures. It's because we're being asked, our teachers and our schools are being asked to do the same job with a whole lot less.
Thank you for that. And Ms. Bolduc, same question.
Funding should follow the student in every situation. And it is the job of the board to oversee education for every student in Jacksonville. You may not know this, but homeschool students and their families are accountable to our state and to the district because they have to have either a standardized test or an evaluation by a certified teacher who is certified by the state of Florida. All of our private schools have alternate certifications, but just like our public school system, our charter school students also have to pass the same test. So the idea that the accountability is not the same for our students is just incorrect. Our students all have to pass the same test. Charters do have the freedom to use different curriculum, different methods of instruction, and they also receive a great deal less funding than our district schools. They receive a lot of outside funding. So I will support students and their parent choice over systems every day, because our school system, rather than talking about the tens of millions that are going to charter schools, we have a $2.7 billion budget. That's 2,700 million. Tens of millions is a drop in the bucket. So our deficit is 1.4 billion. That's a lot more than tens of millions. They are supporting our children in our district, and so we need to support all the parents' options.
Thank you for that. And Ms. Bolduc, will stay with you here. So how would you advocate for greater fiscal transparency from charter schools regarding the use of the sales tax funds? And what measure would you support to ensure all types of schools, which is traditional public, charter, and private, report student outcomes effectively to assure parents and the community of the quality of education that students are receiving?
Transparency is important, and I expect it of all of our schools throughout our district. So whether it's a charter school, a public school, a magnet school, or homeschoolers, I do think that it is important that all of us are accountable. That's one of the reasons why I started helping and supporting homeschoolers, and why for the last 7 years I've worked with them, because they need the support of a certified teacher often to come and say, what can I use? I'm struggling through this situation with my child. Many of them didn't have anyone to go to. I'm trying to get over an educational hump. How can I do it? And they're engaging us as certified teachers. And as a district, I see an opening here for districts to support homeschoolers. I think it would be amazing if we had homeschool offices in our public schools where those services are available to our homeschooling families. It would be amazing if it were that easy for parents to, and then some of those funding could go back, that funding could go back to our public schools from our homeschooling families who are receiving funds in order to buy curriculum and participate in programs, and even to support the work of the teachers and another teacher within the public school system.
Thank you for that. And Mrs. Mannion, same question.
Thank you. So when we look at what is required reporting and what control the school board has over transparency of charters, There's a few things that a school board can do, right? We are limited by the legislature, but what we can do as a school board when we're talking about transparency with charter schools is ask questions. When the district officer comes to report on the finances, ask questions. What is the school receiving? What are they doing with that money? We can be diligent in our requests for information. We need to be building relationships with those schools in our district. There are students in just my street. We have multiple charter schools, multiple public elementary schools. Every family participates in a different school or homeschool option. And so we need to be building relationships with those partners within our community in order to be able to access more information on a transparent basis. We need to be talking to parents, especially charter school parents. How can they advocate for more transparency within their schools? We need to be educating and informing our constituents as far as what their rights are for information that they can receive and ensuring that the district is responding to that information, because without access to that information, there is no transparency.
Thank you so much. So our next question comes to us from our partners at the Duval County Council of PTA. And Mrs. Mannion, we'll start with you for this one. Sometimes school board candidates run with limited hands-on experience in our schools, whether as a parent, volunteer, teacher, or in some other capacity. Can you tell us specifically what schools in DCPS you have worked with or in, what role you were in, what impact you made, and how you were affected by the experience?
Thank you. So I am a product of Duval County Public Schools. So my first experience is as a student, as I mentioned earlier, Greenland Pines, Major Middle, Twin Lakes. I was gifted at Greenland Pines, but we were bused to Loretto Elementary once a week, so I went there as well. I went to Wolfson, so I experienced the magnet program that I was involved in there. My children have attended Bartram Springs, Twin Lakes Elementary, Mandarin Middle, Mandarin High, Mandarin Oaks. I'm very involved in our school's PTA at Mandarin Oaks. I'm very involved in our school advisory council. I'm a hands-on parent. I want to be in my kid's classroom. I want to talk to the teacher and know what's going on. I want to be a part of the decisions, that are being made to support our students. And so how my views have been impacted by that experience. One is I have seen how hard it is to get district support for some of our schools. For example, at Mandarin Oaks Elementary, our PTA raised over $46,000 to get a new marquee put at the front of our school. The marquee we have right now, one side is not working. We're now moving to digital. That is money that has come from our own pockets to build capital items at our school. And it has been a struggle to even get it installed once we receive that money. So my experience as a parent and as a volunteer is seeing how hard it is to work through the red tape of the district just to even fund something that parents have paid for. And so as a school board member, we need to be identifying those needs, reprioritizing our budget to see how the district can support things rather than parents having to pay for it.
Thank you. Mrs. Bolduc, same question.
Thank you. I attended Beauclair Elementary School as a student for my elementary school years. I taught in both Wolfson High School and Mandarin High School, so I was a teacher in both schools. I was at Mandarin Oaks Elementary School. That was our local elementary school where both of my children went. They loved it. They were part of the GATE program. And I actually was a board member on the PTSA the entire time I was there. I was programs director for some of that time. I was a very active parent, homeroom mom, an advocate for our teachers. I volunteered very regularly in everything. And we actually had the same issue with our playground. We purchased a playground as the PTSA, and it was a mess just trying to get that thing put out and put up. So I mirror those concerns and frustrations.
Thank you. Mrs. Bolduc, we'll start with you for this next question. What does community engagement mean to you? Why is it important? And how would you achieve this goal as a board member for your district? Please share what types of activities you will implement to keep your constituents knowledgeable of DCPS policies, programs, and goals.
Goodness, community support is the ultimate in importance. We cannot have strong schools without strong community support, without strong parent support. So as a school board member, I see it as part of my job to make sure that I am keeping constituents informed. And so that means regular community meetings, it means emails, it means, a newsletter, it means finding a way to either add to our district webpage or creating our own that keeps our community members all across Jacksonville, not just District 7, informed of what policies are going to be voted on, making sure they know how to access the agendas, making sure they know how to see school board meetings and workshops when they're not able to attend. Most of these are during a work day for people who work a traditional job. Very difficult to be involved as a parent, very difficult to know what's going on. And so I know the Mandarin Newsline has allowed our current board member, Lori Hershey, who's a friend of mine, a column every month. And so I would continue that.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Mannion, same question.
Thank you. Community engagement means showing up and being there and listening to our community. It means with our students and families, being in schools, volunteering at schools as a board member, taking a day to be a substitute teacher, accepting an invitation to come to a PTA meeting or a SAC meeting and listening to what our constituents have to say, hosting regular town halls with our community at different locations throughout the district at different times to ensure that people who do work a job maybe have an opportunity to go, or those with young children, that they're able to be there. With our community at large, community engagement means fostering partnerships and relationships with our community leaders, ensuring that resources are there for our students, for our teachers. It's not just collaborating with elected officials here, but all across the state, as they're the ones making decisions in Tallahassee that are affecting our funding and our curriculum guidance here. So for me, community engagement means showing up. It means listening to people, communicating with them, responding to emails and phone calls when they happen, and just being available to the citizens in our district.
Thank you for that. And we're going to take a quick pause here just to ask if you all have any Q&A cards that you have written questions on, to please raise your hand so we have our colleagues and our partners who will walk around and pick those up, and they'll deliver those to us. Please know that we are asking relevant questions to education and to a series of the events that are going on in Duval County at the moment. We also have surveys that'll be going around also. There'll be, I know they're collecting question cards right now, but there'll be a card with a QR code on it, and if you could please fill those surveys out on your phones, and it'll give us great feedback on how to continue our forums. You can give us your honest feedback on how this forum is going on this evening. Our colleagues, Courtney and not Melissa, Kylie are passing out our surveys on this evening. So please fill those surveys out so you can let us know how we're doing on this evening and how this forum has went. So now we are moving into the audience Q&A, so we'll get to hear from those in the audience. So we'll start with Mrs. Boduc on this question. Are you, or this is for both candidates, are you in support of arming our teachers?
There is no substitute for highly trained law enforcement officers. My priority would be to be getting properly trained police officers to be our student resource officers. Right now, we have two hurdles to get over for that. Number one, we don't have enough officers to staff schools. Number two, we don't have the money to properly staff schools with police officers. We actually, as a board, we don't pay the full salary that's agreed upon to the union, to the FOP, by the FOP. For our officers, we actually, our city pays the remainder. And so the only way to stop a shooter is with someone with a gun. And I would not support just anyone having a gun in schools. We have a pretty comprehensive program. I understand it's intense, that it's rigorous. And if people are properly trained and are voluntarily carrying, I support our Guardian program in lieu of that, because you cannot teach dead students.
Thank you for that, Ms. Bolduc. And now we will move on to Ms. Mangan.
Thank you. I do not support arming teachers. Thank you. I don't think our teachers signed up for that. I think they already put their lives on the line every day. I don't doubt for a minute a teacher would step in front of my child. I take student safety very seriously. My children are in those buildings every single day, and they are at risk. We need to be properly funding our law enforcement officers that are in our schools and providing them adequate resources to do their jobs. We need to be ensuring that we are making our schools the safest place that they can be. When we're looking at, properly locking doors, perimeter fences, alarms for each teacher to wear, and properly paid and trained law enforcement officers at our school at all times. There should never be a time during the day where there is no law enforcement officer at our school. I know at Mandarin Oaks, when I go to pick my daughter up from extended day, our school resource officer is there until the last child leaves the school. Every school deserves that to be the case because these are our babies. And we should be ensuring that every child and every teacher is safe from harm, and arming our teachers is not the solution. They did not sign up for that, and we trust our law enforcement officers to do that job.
Thank you so much. Ms. Mannion, we'll start with you for this next question from the audience. What would you do to decrease the class sizes for our teachers? The district no longer has to pay a fine when classes are above the class size requirement.
So the first thing is we can't close schools and expect that class sizes are going to remain small, because if we are consolidating schools and we're already cutting teacher positions, those class sizes aren't getting any smaller. And so what we need to be looking at, again, is with our budget, how can we prioritize to ensure that our class sizes stay small? I cannot imagine the task of teaching 30 children in one classroom. That's a lot to ask of anybody, especially with little children. And so we really need to be prioritizing small class sizes, because that benefits our teachers, that benefits our schools, and that really benefits our students to be able to have one-on-one time with their teachers. If we are in a situation where some schools are closed or consolidated, then we need to be ensuring that we have adequate staffing in those classrooms, a paraprofessional, a co-teacher, other staff available to ensure that children are being able to get one-on-one instructional time with their teachers. But if we are closing schools, we're not going to have smaller class sizes. So we need to find a way in our budget to prioritize what we're doing in order to ensure that we can keep our class sizes small, because that's where our kids thrive.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Bolduc, same question.
So when I started teaching, I had 42 kids in one class. The class size amendment at the time in 2000 was 35, but it was an average. And so I had 35 desks in my classroom, because ideally there should have been 35 kids in a class. I had 4 rolly chairs that went at our computer desks. And so I had 39 places for students to sit, and I had to hope that 3 children would be absent every day, and usually they were. But that meant nobody had assigned seating, because it was just first come, first serve. And that's ridiculous. The truth is, if we consolidate schools, we have more money, which means that we can move teachers, pay more teachers ideally, and reduce the classroom size, because we're reducing the operational cost of the schools. So I know that's not popular. Nobody wants to close schools. But again, that's not going to increase class sizes. It's going to reduce costs. So in order to lower class sizes, what we have to do is look at our budget, get rid of the ridiculous spending, cut down on the cost of our third-party contracts, again, looking at our bidding process so that we have more competition to choose businesses that are charging less for some of our services, and then prioritize that funding for teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolduc. And we're going to stay with you actually here. What specific initiatives would you propose to make sure our public schools stay competitive?
I think adding more manufacturing, more of our vocational programs, the creative programming is what's going to do it. Adding, if we were to maybe have one of our schools become a classical magnet or a Waldorf magnet. If we had some of these other programs, I think that's something that'll add value within some of our communities. We have to, I look at charters and go, what are they doing that's drawing these students? What are we doing wrong and what are they doing right? And I think we can take some notes from some pages in their books and go, hey, they're doing this. What if we offered this? Maybe we can get some of these kids back. And so I think it comes down to programming. I think it comes down to restoring public trust, making sure that parents do feel safe because we are being transparent about what's occurring in our schools, instead of learning from, a grand jury report that we're hiding incidents throughout the district and not being open about what's really going on in our schools. So, yeah, restoration of public trust is going to be the biggest thing. That's going to be the way that we keep our teachers. It's going to be the way we keep our students.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Mannion, same question.
Thank you. We have to be innovative and competitive, period. The only way we're going to get more money, unless our revenue streams change, is by increasing enrollment in our schools. And so what programs really drive families? What are they interested in? One thing that we can do is look at our magnet programs and make them easier to access for people. Right here in District 7, I know there's a big push to have a magnet program at our school levels that may be gifted, academically talented. And that doesn't mean a designated magnet where we are pushing kids away from their neighborhood school, but incorporating magnet programs, making academies into our schools to draw more parents, or students who are interested in those things. But really being competitive and looking at what are families interested in and what is driving them. Looking at the needs of a community through the lens of that community. What do they need? What are they interested in? We can also look at, I think a big place of opportunity for our district is at our middle school levels. We often see a dip in enrollment when we're looking at our middle school numbers. What is it that is taking families away at the middle school level? One thing that we have seen that has really, push a lot of families to choose charter schools is K-8 programs because they like the continuity that provides. That is something that should be looked at a district level just to see, is that a more attractive option to allow children to remain in our schools through the middle school level?
Thank you so much. We'll have you start on this next question, Ms. Mannion. In addition to fiscal transparency and equalizing reporting standards for all types of schools, how will you as a board member ensure that all schools who receive state and federal dollars are required to adhere to the same standards of serving all kids? For example, through 504s, IEPs, behavioral modification, and tolerance.
It's a long question. Thank you for that. I think, one, we need to ensure that parents are informed as far as what it means for their student to have a 504 or an IEP. We need to ensure that the schools are working with those parents and that the schools and teachers are communicating with those parents on what those needs are. If needs aren't being met, have meetings, have discussions, advocate at a higher level, and ensure that at a school board, we are putting forth processes and policies that really support those students who may be under those plans. It can be a very hard system to navigate. And how can we make that easier for families to access? How are we advocating for those students and ensuring that their parents and those students and those teachers are aware of what the requirements are under those plans? And so it's really informing, advocating, and ensuring that everybody has access to the same information so that their child is getting the benefit of that individualized plan.
Thank you so much. Ms. Bolduc, same question.
So if I understand your question correctly, what you're actually asking is ensuring equal access across public schools and charter schools. Is that correct?
Ensuring all students receive, ensure that we're adhering to the same standards of serving all kids. So through
Yes.
504s, IEPs, behavior modification, and tolerance is what the audience member asked.
Right. So one of the issues that we do have is actually, that's one thing that, one of the many things that Duval County does extremely well is that we serve our ESE population in a way that most private schools cannot and charter schools do not. So we have more resources, both federal and state, to address 504s and IEPs. And so that's an advantage. And, most of the families that I speak to that are even in St. Johns County, they'll come to me and they'll say, gosh, they're just really not meeting my child's needs. And, I say, try Duval schools because they really do for our ESE and our 504s. It is state law, it is federal law that we meet the needs of our exceptional education students. 504s actually hold teachers accountable as well personally. A teacher can be personally sued for not meeting the needs in the 504 plan. So those are things that all of our district schools need to take very, very seriously.
Thank you for that, and we'll stay with you, Ms. Bolduc, for this next question, and it'll be for the both of you, of course. Are you all in support of raising taxes to make up the budget deficit?
I am not, and I will say why, is I've been looking at how we're spending. And until we are spending money in a way that makes us good stewards, until we get the spending under control instead of just Band-Aid solutions. And initially, as in, the case of many of our home budgets, you may have made mistakes along the way, and so you've got to fix, maybe you had a plumbing leak, right? So you have to fix that plumbing leak, in addition to fixing the water damage that occurred as a result of it. And so right now, we're fixing a lot of water damage, but we're not dealing with the leaks. And so, like I said, the problem with not having enough teachers and ESE teachers and, our schools right now with our master facilities plan, we haven't been adequately keeping track of our budget and budgeting for fixing our schools. And because of that, we've had to raise taxes. But the truth is, we should have been, from the beginning, going to the root of those issues. And so until we are willing to go there, until we're willing to look at every single expenditure and figure out what needs to be cut, I'm not asking for any more money. We need to spend it right. I don't raise my kids' allowance until they can prove to me that they're spending well.
Mrs. Mannion, same question for you.
Thank you. No, at this time, I would not be in favor of raising taxes. We just asked our taxpayers to raise taxes, and they voted for it because they believe in our institutions. But then here we are 2 years later talking about closing top-rated schools. We have to get our budget under control in order to gain the confidence of our taxpayers back when we're asking them for their hard-earned money. There's a lot of room for opportunity in our budget with our contracts, with our, bringing things in-house, figuring out where our waste is occurring. And I believe that's where my particular set of skills is very useful. I can review these items and understand exactly where we need to go, what is going to make a difference at the bottom line. Because if we don't get our budget issues under control and we're not, we're closing schools that we just said, hey, we're gonna fix this roof on this elementary school, but now we're gonna close it. We have lost confidence of our taxpayers. And so we really need to determine what we need to fix within our budget before we ask any taxpayer to pay any more tax dollars. We have to solve the problem first.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you both so much. The next question, we're gonna start with you, Ms. Mannion, for this one. How do you feel about students who leave public school to go to a charter school, costing the public school those dollars, only to have the charter school student return to public schools after a short time, and the public school loses those dollars?
Welcome back. We will happily accept you back into our public schools. I think, every family has the right to choose where they want to put their student and decide what works best for them. And sometimes they need to experience what that is in order to know that maybe this isn't quite the right path for their child. I know at a lot of schools, come January, they usually see a lot of new enrollments that have maybe moved over from charter schools. Some charter schools are incredible in our community. Some are not performing as we would want them to. And so when those students come back to our schools, we welcome them with open arms, funding or no funding. It is unfortunate for our budget that that funding has stayed with that school for the duration of that school year, but hopefully we're doing our job well enough that that student stays on and is enrolled in our schools for years to come, and that funding will follow from there. As a school board, there's not a whole lot that we can do as far as when that funding, when the cutoff for that funding occurs. It's at the beginning of the school year. But what we can do is show what a great job we are doing and welcoming back our charter school students with open arms, and hope that they stay in our system for years to come.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Bolduc, same question.
Thank you. I think this is where our advocacy to Tallahassee comes in, because all of this is governed by state law. And truthfully, if a student was only in a charter school for 8 days and then ends up back in their local public school, I don't think it's right that the charter school gets to keep a full quarter of that money, and I think it should be returned to the public school. But again, this is something that we have to speak to our legislators about, and they are very responsive to say, hey, look, this is a problem, it's something that's happening, and our public schools need the funding for this student because this is where the student is. But as of right now, the state releases funds on a quarterly basis, and that's the way those funds are distributed by Step Up for Students, which is our third-party distribution company.
Thank you for that, Ms. Bolduc, and we're going to stay there with you for this one. This is another audience question. Are there any books that should be deemed inappropriate in school libraries? And if so, what is your criteria?
Yes. My criteria is pornography. It's against state law. So any school that has pornographic material, those books need to be removed. I do believe that students should be well represented. I'm not against diversity of characters. I think that's amazing. I think, that books and, we watch TV. I enjoy Grey's Anatomy. I enjoy, there are people from real life throughout our TV shows that our children are watching. So as far as, the content in our school libraries, they need to be age appropriate, and they need to be in accordance with our state law.
Thank you for that. And Mrs. Mannion, same question.
Thank you. Books should be age appropriate, they should be representative, and they should be accessible to our students. When we talk about what is not acceptable, we need to look at our state law for guidance. Pornography, sexually explicit material is not okay. I don't want that in my, third grader's classroom. However, when we talk about material that just may be biological or, scientific in nature or just diverse in nature, that should be acceptable. And under our current review programs, I believe there are 13 books out of the many, many that were reviewed for reconsideration that have been removed. There are thousands more that were objected to that are still available. Some of them do require parental permission. And I think that really is where our school library should be. It's up to the parent to be able to say, I don't want my kid checking out this book. They should have access to that, and they do. Our school system program now has a website where you can go to see what books are available in your child's school library. And if we're ensuring access to age-appropriate materials that are exciting and fun for kids to read and educational, then we should also be allowing parents to be able to review what is available in those schools and put that on the parent to come to the school to say, hey, I object to this material. But I think that a flat out, across the board, removal of books in certain categories, and the way that it was done where a lot of teachers were not sure what was okay or what wasn't, and you saw a lot of books being removed that never should have been in the first place. So it's really being clear about what our policies are and how parents can review those materials available to their students.
All right, I'm going to try to, because we're running up against time, combine maybe two questions here that relate to your engagement previously and in the future if you are selected as a school board member. We've had a couple folks ask how many school board meetings you have attended in the past. And we also have a question as to whether you are concerned about whether your current job would pose a conflict of interest with your role as a public school board member. Ms. Manuel, we'll start with you on this question.
Thank you. I am so thankful our school board meetings and agenda and committee meetings are available to be viewed online. I have viewed and watched many, many school board meetings, reviewed the agenda material in advance, reviewed any material that's available, going through all the line items on the agenda to see what is there, what is a part of that consent agenda, because that's a really important thing for people to be aware of, because not everything is discussed at the school board meeting. Only a few items are picked for discussion, so it really is up to community members who want to be involved and see what's going on to review all of those materials and ensure that they understand and have the ability to ask questions of their school board representative. I've been to several school board meetings in person, but I am very thankful that there's an online virtual option to even go back and watch them at a later time. I am, as I said, an attorney. I work in real estate, bankruptcy, and probate law. I don't ever sue the district. That's not part of my job. I help families and individuals on an everyday basis, so I don't believe there's any sort of conflict of interest there, as an attorney.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Bolduc, same question.
All right, so I believe the question was how many of you attended? I've been attending school board meetings regularly for 8 years. At a minimum, I've attended sporadically before that as a parent in the district. And as far as, so countless meetings, I have no idea. I work as a teacher. I've been teaching for 24 years. I told you 12 are in the public school system. For the last 12 years, I've been assisting within our public school system as an additional test coordinator, assisting students who weren't passing the test. So I've offered my specialty doing that. And I also teach homeschoolers who have left the system. Most of them have been out of the system for years and just needed extra support. Is it a conflict of interest? Absolutely not. I'm not in competition with the school system. As a matter of fact, DCPS just can't compete with what I do because I offer one-on-one tutoring to these students who were not properly served within Duval County Public Schools. Many of them were 2 to 3 years behind when they came to me making A's and B's in their current school or their DCPS school while they were in it. And so at this point, I'm just offering a public service. And so I will not be stepping down. My maximum salary over the years was $20,000 for the entire year, even though I paid all of my teachers more than that and taught twice as many students as each of them.
Thank you, Ms. Bolduc. We appreciate that. So we have now come down to the last question card of the evening. And Ms. Bolduc, we will start with you. Can you ensure that teachers will be transparent with parents in all that goes on in the classroom with their child?
So can I personally ensure that? No, there's no way to do that. I can't monitor all conversations, but I can help to create and enforce policy that requires teachers to be transparent with parents. And I think it is important that parents know what's going on. They're the greatest stakeholders in education. They know best for their children. Teachers do not know better than parents for their children. And there's no way, the best way to teach a child is to get parents on board and supportive and work as a team. And so if we are hiding things from parents, we are tying some very, very powerful, influential hands from helping their own children. The worst thing we can do is to keep parents out of education. We have to do everything we can to involve them as stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we'll go to Mrs. Mannion.
Thank you. Communication, again, it always comes down to that. One, there is state law, right? That teachers cannot withhold information from their students' parents. And so one, ensuring that our policies are supportive of those laws and are within the thresholds of what the law provides. Every parent has the right to know what's going on in their child's classroom. I know I do. My teacher is incredibly supportive and always engaging. But how do they do that when they are using their instructional time to teach 20 some odd students in the classroom? We rely on technology in order to do that. Our teachers send home curriculum guidance Every single month, there's a newsletter that goes home. Here's what we're learning. Here's what curriculum we're doing. Here's ways that you can support your child. So ensuring that every teacher has what they need in order to communicate that to those parents, and ensuring that the parents understand what technology they need to be accessing. This year, we're using a new platform. Last year was Bloom's. Now we're using Thrill something. And so one, I think it would be very helpful for every school or at the district level to provide training and opportunities for those parents to understand how the technology works, how they can communicate with that teacher through that technology, and ensuring that everybody has access to the information on a regular basis.
Thank you so much. Thank you both so much. Thank you, audience members, for providing such excellent questions. We tried to cover as many as possible again and tried to kind of look for light categories so that we could cover as many of the topics that were raised in the questions that were provided. But we're now going to transition, in the interest of time, to closing remarks. And we want to give each candidate, again, 2 minutes to provide us with their closing comments. We're going to start this time with Ms. Sarah Mannion, and then we will hear from Mrs. Melody Boudreaux.
Thank you. So thank you all for all your very thoughtful questions this evening. We are at an inflection point in our school district. There are some incredible decisions that will be before our school board within the next several years that will affect the trajectory of our school, of our school system for years to come. We deserve leadership on our board that is reasoned, that advocates for every child in our school district, that supports our teachers and ensures that they have the resources that they need, that works to improve our school system for every child, for all, not an advancement of any political agenda or plan, for our students. When elected to the school board, I will work to retain and support our incredibly highly qualified teachers who have not been getting the respect they deserve over the last several years. I will ensure that every student is safe, secure, and supported, not just physically safe from outside threats and harm, but safe in who they are and secure and supported in having the confidence to come to school every day, be who they are, and ensure that they are going to be in a supportive environment. And I will review our budget to ensure that we are being fiscally responsible and smart with your tax dollars. How are we going to be more efficient? What processes can we streamline in order to make it an easier system to access for all? And how can we really increase our revenues through enrollment? What kind of programs can we bring to the district in order to bring more children into Duval County Public Schools? I will be a school board member who shows up, who listens, who advocates, who talks to our community members on a regular basis. I will fight for our public schools because our children and our district deserve absolutely nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to pronounce it correctly. I'm so sorry I mispronounced your name. We'll now hear from Mrs. Melody Boudreaux.
So I'm Melody Boudreaux again. My priorities are to make sure that we are supporting our teachers, creating an environment that's conducive to learning, supporting them in the classroom, doing everything we can to increase spending for the maximum impact for classroom use students and for teachers and for their resources, to work hard to create policy that increases our literacy rates, doing everything we can to attract and retain excellent teachers, to improve student safety. I am the school safety candidate. I'm endorsed by the FOP because I have won their confidence that I will do everything I can to work with them to improve safety in our schools. I will work toward the proper stewardship of public funds and prioritize spending for teachers and students, and increase vocational opportunities for our kids. I am the only teacher in this race. I have 24 years of teaching experience, and I know what needs to be done. I'm a parent in this district, have been for many years. I am dedicated to making sure that your voice is heard, to be available, to increase transparency between all stakeholders in the district, to listen to you, to return voicemails and phone calls, to educate you in the current issues in education and solicit your feedback, on important votes and to engage you as a stakeholder in our children's future. I am an advocate for teachers, for students, for parents in our community. I am not for one. Children are always first, but we will not have the best outcomes in our classrooms if we do not take care of teachers. I am committing to be an active and passionate advocate for the children of Duval County and a positive change agent for our schools. Let's make Duval County schools the best option for every child. Experience matters. Put a teacher on the school board. Melody Bolduc, thank you.
We want to thank everybody for coming out tonight on behalf of the Jacksonville Public Education Fund. We want to thank our candidates for coming and participating in this important community forum on tonight. Please give both candidates a round of applause. We also would really like to thank the Hopewell Church for hosting us on this evening, this beautiful facility and campus, and thank their workers for working so hard and making sure we're running online and also being able to host you in person on tonight. Please make sure to fill out those surveys on this evening before you go. Please scan that QR code on that blue slip. If you need another one, we'll get one to you. That helps us get information and be able to provide that back to you all on a lot of different things as we go forward in the future and for future forums as well. So we ask that you please fill out those surveys for us on today. Please make plans today to vote and get others within your network informed and get ready to cast an informed vote as you all are here today being informed and engaged. Please remember that our early voting starts on Monday, August 5th, and goes through the 18th of August, with Election Day being on August 20th, and polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on that day. Remember that our children cannot vote, but who can? You can, we can vote for our student. Our city's children are counting on you, on us. So please make sure of those dates, get active, get involved, and we will thank you for coming out and joining us on this evening. Have a wonderful afternoon and evening. Thank you.